bill. We won't call it repeal the Patriot Act. We're going to say repeal repeal restore the Fourth Amendment Act is what we want. Unfortunately, we have not taken the advice of the founders nor looked at our Constitution, because in a republic, the government is supposed to be open. The people are supposed to have their privacy. The government is supposed to, if anything, protect our privacy. Today, as this legislation continues to be passed, and they're attacking now the internet, it seems like they don't care about our privacy, and we can't find out what's going on in the government. That, of course, is the real reason why we need to know a lot more about the Federal Reserve System. I agree. That's a very good idea. Let's do that. I think next year would be a grand year, 100 years old. We'll celebrate the Federal Reserve Act by repealing the Federal Reserve Act. And the people who get all the benefits, the military-industrial complex, the banks, the big corporations, the people who get the money, the people overseas who get the money and get the bailouts. I said, no, we can't do that. But what about the people who suffer the consequences? What about the people who didn't get the bailouts? What about that? The middle class suffers the most when you destroy a currency, whether it's ongoing in this country, whether it was in Mexico in the past, or Central America, or Zimbabwe, or Germany. It's the middle class that suffers the consequences. The natural consequence of destruction of currency means there's a transfer of wealth from the middle class and the poor to the wealthy. So this is what's going on. This is why there is anger. This is why they don't even pretend to balance the budget, why they don't even bring up budget resolutions, because they don't have an answer and there's no money in the Treasury. That is the reason. So what we have to deal with is, where does wealth come from? Does it come from the government? No, the government gets in the way. The wealth comes from productive individuals when they have the ability to produce and get the government out of the way, and you can be rewarded for your efforts. But the Federal Reserve has served the interest of the very wealthy. You could not have runaway entitlement spending, and you could not have the wars fought if you didn't inflate and destroy the currency. So these are events that are coming about. We have not ever talked about them before in a presidential campaign, and the issue is big government or individual liberty. And it is the issue of liberty that can bring us together. Not so much that we would agree on how to use our liberty, but precisely because people are different. People want to use their liberties in different ways, but it is not confrontational if we all get together and say, we want to be free people, we want to run our lives as we choose, our lifestyle should be our own decision, our money that we earn should be our own, and the government should butt out of it. And if we have the freedom today, most people understand this, we have the freedom of picking our own religion, and there's many different religions, and we can pick no religion if we don't want to, and we don't feel intimidated, and we don't have to endorse what people do and pick. Same way with our intellectual liberties. We're allowed to read the books we want, even very dangerous philosophies that can do damage to us. We're allowed to read and study. But why is it? Why is it if we protect intellectual and religious liberty, why can't we protect the liberty of you to put into your bodies whatever you choose? When we were having a vote on the House floor once on this subject, they were voting to take away more of your personal liberties, and I asked a member sitting next to me, why are you doing that? He says, the people are too stupid. They don't know how to take care of themselves. But tell you what, if we ever go and accept fully this notion that the government can protect us against ourselves, there is no liberty left. And this is the reason it has to be up to the individual. Does that mean that each and every one of us will make the right decision? No, some people are going to make mistakes, but you have to assume responsibility for those mistakes. But what happens if you defer? What happens if you defer to the politician and the bureaucrats? They make a mistake. We all suffer the consequence. But it's this idea that if you legalize freedom that you endorse what people do, and that's absolutely not the truth. Because people will use things differently and do things in different manners. The idea is that we as individuals make all our own decisions. We should decide what we smoke, drink, or whatever we do. So for me, even as a physician and knowledgeable enough to know that there are some benefits from raw milk, that isn't the issue for me as a politician. The issue, should you not have the right to make your own decision if you want to drink raw milk or not? Now, others say, well, that's okay to a point, but we have to make sure that nobody ever uses any drugs. And I said, you mean alcohol? Oh, no, we don't mean that. We're talking about those illegal bad things. And then I said, well, guess where most of the addiction is? Is it on the illegal drugs? No, most of the addiction is on the prescription drugs. That's where the real problem is. But drugs and making our own decision is risky. There are some dangers to that. But the greatest danger in the war on drugs has been the war on drugs, much more dangerous than the drugs themselves. Because there have been laws in the books, and rather recent, just since the 1937 or 38, they had the first laws against marijuana. So they, even through World War II, we were coaxing and asking people to raise hemp, and the founders all had hemp farms, and yet today, if you go out and start raising hemp and making industrial hemp, they say, oh no, you can't do that because it sort of looks like marijuana. So we'll chase all those jobs up to Canada, then we can buy the products from Canada because they can raise hemp. But this is the absurdity of it all. And what we have to think about is restoration of personal responsibility and personal decision making, and that's what freedom is all about. But it brings up the question about, if you're going to have some regulations, who should do it? Should it be a national government or should it be a local government? Well, my personal opinion, where the regulations come from, you, the individual, you, your family, teaching your kids, your community, your church or whatever to teach you values, that's where the real regulation should come from. But today, there are some states now that said that sick people, it is now known, can't be helped with marijuana, California and other states. So what does our president do? His promise to lighten up on those law enforcement? He's enforcing those laws worse than ever. And it's an interesting way to bring up the issue of states' rights. Some people like to paint the notion of states' rights as being something bad. But conservatives talk about states' rights. Sometimes they follow them, sometimes they don't. But liberals should understand, well, maybe it should be the state prerogative of what they should do in how this should be administered. This is essentially what happens with alcohol. The national prohibition of alcohol was a disaster. And we woke up and finally said, no, it's not that alcohol isn't dangerous. Matter of fact, I think most people in this country know that alcohol is many, many-fold more dangerous than marijuana. And of course, the real danger comes from, well, it's tremendously expensive. Our national debt was added to by $3 trillion in the last 30 years because of the drug laws. We put people in prison for life, 3 times arrested for nonviolent crimes, and they're kept for life. At the same time, We find, lacks in law enforcement when it comes to rapists and murderers. So it makes no sense. We have 5% of the world population. We have 25% of the world prisoners. And my suggestion to you is that I do not believe that the American people are that much worse than other people. I say we have way too many laws on the books. Of course, along with the National Defense Authorization Act on January 1st, there were 40,000 new laws placed on our books. Now, what I would like to be is the first president to get rid of 40,000 useless laws. After the Constitutional Convention, Franklin was asked, what have they given us? And his remark was, we have given you a republic if you can keep it, which is a major task, because if we don't change our way, if our revolution is not successful, we're going to lose it. But they had a high disregard for pure democracy, not the democratic process of electing leaders, but the process of letting the majority dictate against the minority. And they considered that a danger. But I think we're at that point now. We believe that if you get that 51%, they can undermine the rights of the individuals. The purpose of a republic is to protect the rights of all individuals and not to protect it, and that would be one of the rare limited functions of the federal government. But their reason that they didn't like democracy, they said eventually when you get a pure democracy, it tends to waste. And when you think about the waste in this country, because there's always those in power and can manipulate and maneuver and get the contracts and all the things that go on behind in the Federal Reserve, it wastes and it also consumes wealth. We're consuming wealth now. We're not producing wealth. We haven't had any significant new jobs in the last 10 years. And we've had 30-some million new people in this country. So we're wasting and we're consuming. And their prediction at the time was if you allow that to happen, you will self-destruct. Now, the Soviet system self-destructed. It was predictable because that type of system isn't functionable. But our system isn't functional either. It's not as ruthless as communism, but in a way it's wasteful and it consumes. It's built on debt, it's built on paper money and the powerful special interests, and it's becoming known that the groups are lining up. You know, the 99 and 1, and we got to tax the rich and this sort of thing. Now, I'm not for taxing the rich if they honestly earn their living. That's okay. But I'm for dealing with those individuals, and that's a large number of the very, very wealthy making the billions, because they get special treatment, either from the contracts or the special interest in the bailouts. That's a different system, and that is causing resentment. And this is the reason that we're more or less at an impasse in Washington, D.C., because there was a lot of compromise. They always argue that we have to have compromise and work together. When we were very wealthy and had money in the bank, the compromise was easy. Conservatives and liberals said, we'll vote for your package, I'll vote for your package, and they would pass endlessly spending money. But it isn't there anymore. In the last 4 years, that's why this is different. We realize the treasury is empty, the productivity is down, and we have to do something about it. That means to produce